Could it be that the strangers you fear in the sky have actually been rising from the soil beneath your feet this entire time? The question hangs in the dim air around you as you stand completely still, the ground humming softly under your shoes, as if something old and patient is shifting miles below. You feel the tremor first, light, almost polite, like someone knocking from under a wooden floor. Then the scent of damp stone curls upward, mixing with the quiet of your room, and suddenly the here and now dissolves into something older, slower, and far more curious than you expected. A thin draft brushes past your ankles, the way a cat might graze you in the dark, though you own no cat. And as your eyes adjust, you swear the shadows are leaning in, hoping you'll take the hint that tonight you're not just listening, you're entering. But before the earth swallows you whole, and don't worry, it usually only does that metaphorically, there's a small reality check. You're safe, sitting wherever you are, probably with a snack way too close to your microphone. The ground isn't opening, and no glowing-eyed mole people are climbing out to ask for Wi-Fi. Not yet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me your location and your local time. There's something poetic about knowing where you stand on the surface while we explore what may lie beneath it. You inhale slowly. The light around you flickers just a little, not ominous, just dramatic enough to make you feel as though the story has been waiting for you. Then the tremor comes again, faint but rhythmic, like a heartbeat muffled under miles of living stone. Historians still argue whether humans first imagined inner worlds because of these natural rumbles, or because early cultures simply enjoyed terrifying their neighbors. But the effect on you is undeniable. You feel pulled downward, as if gravity has suddenly remembered an old promise. You step forward, no door, no stairs, just a soft yielding of the air, as the narrative folds around you, carrying you into a place where ancient texts whisper of realms below. In your ear, the world speaks with the slow cadence of something older than sunlight. The soil beneath your feet grows warmer as you move, and a damp mineral scent fills your lungs. You think of the prehistoric people who once gathered around firelight, telling stories of creatures emerging from caves, stories that later became myths of underworld guardians, or entire civilizations hidden beneath mountains. A mainstream historical fact unfolds in your memory. The ancient Greeks believed the entrance to Hades lay at the Necromanteion of Epirus, a cave so echoing and deep that even modern engineers note its unusual acoustics. As you walk now, you feel that echo resonating with your footsteps, as though the ground itself approves your curiosity. A faint glow emerges ahead. Not bright, but enough to guide your path without revealing its source. The moment reminds you of an odd tidbit you once heard. A fringe theory claiming bioluminescent fungi evolved deep inside Earth long before plants reached the surface, lighting hidden paths for beings that never needed the sun. You chuckle under your breath at the idea. If giant mushroom lanterns exist below, you hope they're at least as friendly-looking as the ones in children's games. Still, you feel a strange reverence taking hold, a quiet sense that your breathing is being matched by something breathing with you. The air thickens, not uncomfortably, but with the weight of old secrets. You don't fall, you drift, as the path curves gently downward like a long, ancient artery. In the darkness behind you, the world you know grows distant. The surface world, with its sky, its stars, its sometimes disappointing fast food options. Here, the ceiling lowers just enough for you to brush your fingertips across it, feeling grooves carved by water thousands of years ago. And you remember how historians still argue whether ancient cave markings depict astronomical constellations or maps of tunnels leading deeper into the Earth's belly. What you feel now, though, doesn't quite match either interpretation. These grooves feel deliberate, almost hospitable. The ground widens beneath your steps, the space opening like a stone throat. A low hum begins, steady, resonant, soft enough that it might just be your imagination trying to impress you. But it continues and grows and begins to pulse gently beneath your ribs. It reminds you of a subway train approaching far underground, the way the rails begin vibrating before you hear anything at all. Except here, there are no rails, and you definitely didn't buy a ticket. Your breath slows. Something ancient exhales in return. You glance to your right and notice small crystalline formations on the wall, shimmering faintly like ice that refuses to melt. You run your fingers across them, warm, startlingly warm, and feel a subtle vibration. A thought rises. Some people would call this completely normal geology. Another? Some people would not. A soft laugh escapes you, not nervous, just amused, because there's something hilariously human about standing in an impossible cavern and thinking, "Yep, that tracks." That's joke number one, not bad for a journey into the unknown. Beneath your feet, the soil shifts again, gentler this time, almost like a welcome, and suddenly you see it. A narrow fissure, just wide enough for you to slip through, glowing faintly with that same soft light. The walls are close, but not frighteningly so. More like they're guiding you with the firmness of an old mentor who knows you can handle it. You step inside. The world narrows. The heartbeat beneath the earth steadies. And in this breathless moment, you understand something simple yet monumental. You've already crossed the threshold. There's no turning back now without disappointing the story itself. The path is sloping further downward, carrying you with reverent ease, and you realize the narrative has chosen you as much as you've chosen it. The air warms again. The light deepens. Somewhere, water drips rhythmically, a second heartbeat joining the first. You swallow, steady your nerves, and continue moving, step by slow step, deeper into the mystery of whether the beings we've always looked for in the stars have actually been brushing past us from below. You ease forward, letting the gentle slope carry you deeper, and the narrow fissure slowly expands around you until the ceiling rises again. The glow that guided your steps softens, becoming diffuse, like moonlight filtered through mineral fog. You reach out and touch the wall beside you, smooth now, almost polished, and a cool whisper of air moves past your cheek, as though something unseen has slipped by to announce the next layer of truth. Beneath your fingertips, the stone hums with faint, irregular pulses. They don't feel random. They feel like signals. You exhale slowly, listening. Every ancient culture recorded something about the underworld. Not always a realm of the dead, but a realm of secrets, hidden peoples, or living fire. You remember a mainstream historical detail. The ancient Mesopotamians believed the earth was a series of layers, each guarded by powerful beings, and their oldest tablets speak of gates sealed by watchers beneath. And you sense those echoes now, mingling with the air like dust disturbed after centuries of rest. The passage bends again, opening into a cavern so wide you have to stop and catch your breath. Stalactites hang like stone chandeliers, dripping slow, rhythmic droplets that echo across the chamber. But it isn't the size of the place that stops you. It's the strange feeling that the empty air holds. Memory. Every sound feels amplified, as if the walls themselves have been waiting to hear your footsteps. You swallow, whispering under your breath, "Okay, if this is where the mole people hold their PTA meetings, I'm leaving." That's your second joke, dry and whispered, instantly swallowed by the vast stillness. A cool draft slides across your skin, pulling you forward. You follow, noting how the ground dips into a shallow curve, as if shaped by countless feet over countless years. You imagine ancient travelers here, walking by torchlight guided by acoustics instead of stars. The thought sends a shiver down your spine, not of fear but of recognition. To your left, you notice something carved into the stone. Lines, spirals, small hollow impressions. You crouch and run your thumb through one of the grooves. It's deeper than you expected, too precise to be erosion. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. Some modern hollow earth enthusiasts believe these markings are ancient trail signs left by civilizations that migrated inward rather than outward after the last ice age. You don't have to accept the theory to feel the weight of the carving beneath your skin. Someone made these. Someone who expected them to last. As you stand again, sound shifts, barely perceptible, but there. A low echo ripples through the cavern, like a tone produced by vibrating strings hidden in the stone. You turn your head, trying to locate the source. It's not wind, not water, something else. Some scholars suggest certain cave complexes naturally resonate at frequencies that make humans feel watched, guiding myths of underground spirits. Historians still argue whether ancient people interpreted these resonances as divine messages or simply eerie coincidences. But as the tone shivers across your chest, you realize the debate feels strangely personal down here. The cavern narrows into a long corridor of sharp, uneven rock, and you begin walking again. Your footsteps echo in strange patterns, some close, some impossibly distant, as if the geometry itself is rearranging sound. You try not to imagine invisible beings using the echoes to track your movement like sonar. The thought alone earns you a third joke. If something down here is using echolocation, I hope it at least has the courtesy to send a friend request first. The air warms again, shimmering faintly like heat over asphalt. The mineral scent deepens, and new layers emerge. Clay, sulfur, something faintly metallic. You're still on the outer skin of the planet, yet you feel as if you've stepped into an older ecosystem. Your fingertips brush the wall as you walk, and this time the vibrations feel patterned, short pulses, then long, then short again. Morse code comes to mind, even though you know that's your surface brain trying to translate the inexplicable. You pause at a fork where the tunnel divides into 3 paths, each lit by the same dim bioluminescent glow that never seems to have a source. You inhale, close your eyes, and listen. The left tunnel hums faintly, steady but uninviting. The right emits a chill that settles into your teeth like cold water. But the center tunnel, the center one pulses with a soft, almost melodic resonance. Something in your chest aligns with it. So you choose the center. It slopes downward in a graceful arc, like a slide carved by centuries of underground rivers. The floor grows smoother, the ceiling lower. You duck under a natural arch where water drips steadily, and as one drop lands on your forehead, you're struck by a memory. Volcanic cave systems in Iceland, where ancient travelers believed you could hear messages from the earth itself if you pressed your ear to the rock. A mainstream fact, simple enough, but here the memory feels like foreshadowing. Pressure builds around you, not heavy, just present. The air becomes dense, as if charged with static. The soft glow ahead brightens, revealing a vast network of natural columns, each one twisting upward like the spines of forgotten giants. Your breath catches again. The space feels too symmetrical to be accidental. You approach one of the columns, noticing thin slits running vertically along its surface, almost like vents. When you place your hand against it, the pulse intensifies. Long, short, long, repeating, almost musical. You whisper, "If this thing starts singing Broadway, I'm turning around." The joke falls flat, but it distracts you from the uncanny familiarity of the patterns. Beyond the columns lies a narrower passage shaped like a rib cage, arched, elegant, unnervingly organic. You duck inside, moving between the curved walls that almost seem to breathe. A low rumble travels through the stone, so deep it vibrates your bones. You pause, pressing your palm to one wall. It's faint, but the rhythm feels like communication, not directed at you, but not uninterested in you either. You step forward again, deeper, slower, carrying with you the strange knowing that you're not exploring an empty world. You're brushing against its edges, its whispers, its heartbeat. And somewhere far below, something is listening. You walk between the stone ribs, and the vibrations grow clearer, peeling away from the background rumble you first felt above. At first, they're just tremors, tiny shivers along the wall, but soon your mind starts picking patterns out of the noise, like constellations in a dark sky. Long, long, short. Pause. Short, short, long. The repeating sequence presses into your skin as if the rock itself is quietly tapping your shoulder, asking, "Do you hear me now?" You slow your breathing to match the rhythm. The air tastes faintly metallic, like old coins or the inside of a train tunnel after rain. Under your feet, the ground feels less like loose soil and more like the surface of an enormous instrument, something tuned long ago and never fully silenced. You think of the first seismographs in the late 19th century, how scientists learned to read ripples in the earth, to map quakes on the other side of the world. A straightforward historical fact, yet down here it feels strangely intimate. Humans listening to the planet's internal murmurs for the first time like a stethoscope pressed to a giant's chest. The corridor narrows, and you instinctively place one hand on each wall. The vibrations sharpen as your body becomes a bridge between them. Tiny pulses skim your bones, delicate as piano notes played far away. They're too organized to ignore. Not loud, not dramatic, just persistent. Something wants to be noticed, but not by everyone. Only by those who've come far enough to feel it. A trickle of unease nudges you, so you answer it with a joke. If this is a cosmic group chat, I definitely missed the terms and conditions. Your words drift down the passage, swallowed by the hum, but the act of saying them steadies you, grounds you again as a visitor, not a captive. You move forward, and the tunnel opens into another chamber, smaller but more focused, like a listening room. The ceiling dips low, the floor rises slightly, and in the center stands a squat, rounded boulder. Unlike the jagged formations you've passed so far, its surface is smooth, almost glossy, and faint lines crisscross it like a web of hairline fractures. As you approach, the pulses gather themselves, converging toward the stone, as if it's both transmitter and receiver. You crouch and press your ear against it. The cold shocks you at first, then fades as warmth rises from within, meeting you halfway. The signal is clearer here. It's no longer just rhythm. There are layers now. Low, steady waves beneath quick, fluttering ripples. You're not trained to decode any of this, but your body reacts anyway. Heart sinking to one layer, breath to another. In your mind's eye, you remember fringe stories you've heard in late-night corners of the internet. Operators of deep earth drilling projects reporting strange feedback through their equipment, patterns that looked nothing like rock stress or normal tremor signatures, only to have their data mysteriously lost or their projects abruptly shut down. Some call it paranoia, others simple bureaucratic chaos. But kneeling here, cheek against stone, the idea of deliberate interference doesn't feel so outlandish. You whisper, "Is this how you talk then? Through pressure and rhythm?" The stone doesn't answer in words. Instead, the pulses shift, becoming slightly faster, as if acknowledging your question. It's only a sensation, a subjective impression, but it lands with the weight of a greeting. You lean back, placing both hands on the stone, and try to recall the languages humanity already uses to talk to the unseen. Radio waves sent into space, lasers bounced off lunar mirrors, probes launched into the darkness with golden records attached. Yet here you are, wondering if the most alien conversation might not be extraterrestrial at all, but intraterrestrial, encoded in vibrations that ripple up through bedrock instead of through vacuum. A thin crack runs along the chamber wall, catching your attention. It glows faintly, not with the diffuse light you've been walking through, but with a pinched, focused luminescence, like a thin nerve lit from within. Curious, you stand and touch the crack with your fingertips. The moment you make contact, the chamber's entire frequency seems to wobble, then stabilize at a new pitch. You feel suddenly like you've adjusted a dial. It reminds you of an odd little fact. Some regions of the world, like Taos in New Mexico, report a persistent, low-frequency hum that only certain people can hear. Engineers blame distant machinery or atmospheric conditions, while others whisper about hidden installations or deeper causes. Historians still argue whether these hums inspired older tales of underground spirits, or whether modern ears are just rebranding ancient anxieties with new vocabulary. Either way, you understand the old urge to give such phenomena a face, a personality, maybe even a home. The chamber responds to your touch. The glow in the crack grows slightly brighter, and new, softer pulses begin to flow beneath your hands, like a secondary channel joining the first. You can't shake the sense that you've activated something, not a trap, not a door, but a line. As if some immense switchboard deep within the earth has just rerouted a sliver of its attention toward you. You pull your hand back, half expecting alarms, collapsing stone, or at least a passive-aggressive text from the planet. Instead, the hum settles into a steady, almost soothing pattern. There is no threat in it, only awareness. You tilt your head, trying to translate. Could an inner civilization, evolved over millennia, use vibrations as a primary language? Pressure waves instead of spoken words? Frequency instead of facial expression? It would be logical for beings adapted to rock and magma, to tunnels and chambers where light is unreliable but density is constant. To them, you think, your surface obsession with radio telescopes and star maps might seem almost quaint. The idea draws a small smile from you. Imagine, you murmur. We've been shouting at the sky for decades while the neighbors downstairs are just trying to get our attention with a knock on the ceiling. That's another joke, half serious, and it breaks the solemn intensity just enough to let you breathe easier. You wander the edges of the chamber, noticing other cracks, other faint glows. Some vibrate at different speeds, like separate voices in a quiet chorus. If you were trained, you think, perhaps you could distinguish them more clearly. Perhaps each frequency carries different data, warnings, observations, histories, maybe even recordings of surface events transmitted through the massive, resonant body of the planet like whispers passed through bone. A mainstream historical image surfaces in your mind. The ringing of church bells across war-torn cities, used to signal danger or peace to people who couldn't see the horizon. Those bells shaped behavior, shaped memory, shaped entire communities. Down here, you suspect, something similar could shape civilizations you've never seen. You pause in the center again, letting the hum wash over you. Part of you wants to dismiss it all as geology, as the natural orchestra of thermal shifts, tectonic flex, and water creeping through narrow veins. That explanation is comforting, tidy, safe for academic publication. But another part of you, quieter, older, remembers the deliberate feeling of those pulses at the columns, the strange sense of being noticed as you passed. You realize it doesn't have to be either or. Intelligence, if it exists below, might have woven itself into the natural systems long ago, using the planet's own rhythms as its circuitry. Like a mind spread through stone instead of neurons, thinking in centuries instead of minutes. The idea sends a tremor of awe through you. Not fear, awe. The chamber's hum dips for a moment, then rises again, like a slow inhale and exhale. You feel gently dismissed, not rudely, but with the kind firmness of something that has other things to attend to. Mantle currents, magnetic fields, perhaps the occasional meteor impact to absorb. The glow in the central crack dims slightly, nudging you toward the exit tunnel you hadn't noticed before. You look back at the smooth boulder one last time. For a second, you imagine the pulses shaping a single word, later. But you know that's your human brain again, eager to find stories in everything. Still, you nod, just in case. Then you turn toward the new passage, where the walls tighten into a narrow throat, and faint markings appear, lines that look suspiciously like pathways, like routes chosen and recorded. The signalers in the bedrock have done their part. They've shown you that below your world, something may already be speaking. Now it seems they want to show you who might be drawing the maps. You ease into the narrow throat of the passage, the walls close enough that your shoulders almost brush both sides. The air cools again, and the faint bioluminescence shifts from pale white to a muted amber, as if the cavern is adjusting its mood for what comes next. Ahead, the markings you glimpsed before sharpen into crisp grooves, straight lines, curves, symbols that repeat in cycles. Not random scratches, not natural erosion. These are deliberate. You run your fingertips across one of the grooves, feeling a slight indentation, as though whoever carved these marks used tools far more precise than stone chisels. They remind you, faintly, of the petroglyphs left by ancient cultures around the world. Though unlike those, these lines seem designed to guide rather than depict. A memory floats up. Mainstream historical maps from early cartographers, riddled with blank spaces and speculative sketches of lands no one had verified. "Here be dragons," they wrote, half serious, half warning. You think of that phrase now as you step deeper, guided by symbols that look like directions drawn for someone who already knows what lies ahead. The tunnel opens into a long gallery, carved with geometric motifs, circles intersecting circles, spirals woven through straight lines like knots in an ancient tapestry. For a moment, you imagine old explorers stumbling into this place with flickering torches, taking frantic charcoal rubbings before rushing back to the surface to report something unbelievable. But then you remember the stories of documents that mysteriously vanished, maps redacted, expeditions denied funding for reasons deemed operational. Historians still argue whether early cartographers deliberately erased passages leading underground to maintain theological narratives, or whether governments later sanitized them for their own purposes. You stop beside a particularly large motif, 2 concentric circles linked by 7 straight lines. It feels like a map, but not a map of any surface landscape. The lines are too straight, too deliberate in their spacing. They remind you of subway diagrams, of routes connecting known hubs to places unmarked and unspoken. You mutter your 4th joke of the journey. If this is the underground version of Google Maps, the designer needs to work on accessibility. Your voice echoes dryly across the gallery, softened by the stone, but carrying the faint umpsement you cling to. The markings continue deeper along the wall, and you follow them like breadcrumbs. Each groove seems etched with purpose, guiding your gaze toward a raised platform carved into the far end of the chamber. On it rests a slab, flat, smooth, almost table-like. You approach slowly, your footsteps muffled by the dust of centuries. The slab is covered in engravings, arranged in layered shells, like topographic rings on a geological map. Yet the curves imply depth in a way that suggests these aren't elevations but levels, tiers spiraling downward into a conceptual center. Your fingertips hover above the surface, afraid to disrupt the dust resting there, as though it might be evidence in an ancient case file. A fringe tidbit flickers into memory. The myth of Agartha, often described as a vast inner realm accessed through hidden gates in the Himalayas, the poles, or deep caverns. Some versions of the legend claim that early explorers returned with stories of maps showing a world beneath the crust, complete with cities, transit routes, and a central governing city. Most dismiss those tales as fabrications, but standing before this slab, you understand why such stories were so persistent. Something here resembles a diagram of descent, not mythic, but technical. You brush a small arc of dust away, revealing more symbols. The curves are intricate, yet intuitive, as though designed for someone navigating a complex system of tunnels. You imagine early explorers tracing these paths with trembling fingers, realizing they were standing in a world mapped long before their civilizations learned to draw a compass rose. You inhale sharply as your eyes fall upon a section near the slab's center, tiny dots arranged in patterns that look almost like constellations. Except these aren't stars. They're more like nodal points, junctions where pathways intersect. A subterranean star map, a navigation system for a world without sky. The thought hits with a weight you weren't prepared for. If these markings map something real, then someone, something, has traveled these routes systematically enough to record them, with intention, with memory, with continuity. Your pulse picks up. The air grows heavier. You sense a pressure behind you, not threatening, but aware. You turn slowly, half expecting to see a figure standing in the doorway. But there's nothing. Only the dim amber glow and the quiet hum beneath your feet. You whisper, "Did explorers see this? Did they report it?" The chamber gives no answer. You straighten, recalling historical accounts of expeditions to the inner Amazon, the Himalayas, or deep Siberia. Some returned with vague notes about caverns too symmetrical to be natural, underground lakes reflecting perfect ceilings, stone pillars arranged like the foundations of cities. Other expeditions simply didn't return. Their maps ended abruptly, their journals half-filled, their routes marked lost. Historians debate whether those disappearances were due to accidents, disease, or the harshness of unexplored terrain. But again, down here, you can't help wondering whether maps were erased not because they were wrong, but because they were too accurate. You take a slow step back from the slab, noticing something carved into the floor at its base. A long, sweeping arrow pointing toward a darkened passage behind the platform. Its simplicity is startling, almost modern. It suggests movement, direction, continuation. Whoever carved this didn't want the viewer to stop here. This is a waypoint, not a destination. The hum beneath your feet intensifies slightly, like encouragement. You bend down to inspect the arrow more closely. The lines are crisp, not smoothed by erosion. Recent, or at least maintained. That realization settles on your shoulders like a cold hand. Someone has been here after the slab was carved, maybe long after. Someone who still follows the old routes. The gallery suddenly feels less like a museum and more like an active station. Quiet now, but not abandoned. You glance at the passage behind the platform. Its entrance is tall enough to walk through, but narrow, like a throat leading to deeper lungs. The amber glow doesn't reach inst. The darkness there is thick, almost physical. Your breath comes slower, heavier. You feel the weight of the map behind you, the hum below you, the silence ahead of you. You know the story you've stepped into won't let you turn back. Not now that you've seen the evidence. Maps drawn in stone, arrows pointing forward, pathways too deliberate to be natural. You murmur, if anyone lied about these maps, they did a thorough job. Another joke, though softer now, absorbed by the seriousness around you. You place your palm against the entrance of the dark passage. The stone is warm, welcoming, expectant, and as you step inside, you feel the subtle shift of the earth again, its quiet approval or perhaps its curiosity. The path you follow is older than any explorer, yet still maintained. The cartographers who walked before you did not map the world above. They mapped the world within. And their secrets are waiting. The darkness swallows you whole, but not violently. It feels more like the hush inside a grand cathedral after the last candle has been snuffed. Your eyes strain, adjusting, finding faint gradients of shadow that guide your steps. The walls on either side rise high and uneven, but you sense an intentionality in the space. A corridor shaped not by chaos, but by long, slow design. You reach out, brushing your fingertips across the stone. It's warm again, pulsing faintly, as though something deep inside it remembers being shaped. As your vision settles, a subtle glow appears, not from above or around, but from below. Narrow channels run along the floor, filled with a soft, milky luminescence, like veins carrying pale fire. The light brightens and darkens in a slow rhythm, guiding you. You follow it downward, deeper into the Earth's hidden architecture. The corridor widens without warning, opening into a cavern so vast it steals the breath from your lungs. The ceiling arches high enough that you can't see where it ends, and columns of stone rise from floor to roof like the support beams of an impossible cathedral, each carved with spirals, runes, and symbols that shift subtly as you walk past, as though their shadows carry their own logic. You pause, overwhelmed by the sheer scale. Above you, something glimmers in the dark, a network of crystalline strands stretching across the upper reaches of the cavern, catching the faint glow from the floor. For a moment, you think you're seeing stars. But these stars move slightly, shimmering as though alive. They remind you of the stories surrounding the vast cathedrals of medieval Europe. Mainstream historical fact, where architects aligned stained glass windows so sunlight would strike them at specific angles during particular seasons, painting coded messages across the pews. Down here, you wonder if the shimmering strands serve the same purpose, bending light to illustrate knowledge intended only for those who walk the inner paths. You whisper, "If this is what spiders make down here, I'm filing a complaint," letting your voice carry the fifth joke gently through the cavern. It feels good to hear sound again, your own sound, after the miles of quiet that carried you here. As you venture deeper into this subterranean cathedral, the floor channels brighten, splitting and branching like roots. They form pathways that wind between the towering columns, each route glowing with its own pulse, its own speed. You follow the slowest one, trusting the rhythm that seems most aligned with the steady heartbeat you first felt near the surface. The air grows warmer, thicker, rich with minerals. When you inhale, you taste iron, salt, and something faintly sweet, almost floral, like orchids that bloom in darkness. The cavern narrows again, funneling you toward a large archway. Beyond it, you see what looks like structures, not natural, not random. Buildings, though not built of bricks or wood or metal. Instead, they rise from the ground as though grown from the stone itself, smooth, rounded forms with openings shaped like doorways. Each structure emits a faint, internal glow, enough to outline their forms against the blackness. A city without sun. Your steps slow, becoming reverent. The stone beneath you feels smoother now, as though polished by countless travelers. The air is still warm, but it carries a new sensation. A subtle vibration in the center of your chest, as if the heart of this place recognizes your arrival. You approach one of the structures, touching the outer surface. It's warm, almost soft. Not flesh, not plant, but something in between, like stone that learned to breathe. A fringe tidbit slips into your mind. Tales from the 19th century about explorers who claimed to see bioluminescent palaces deep within Kentucky caves, structures glowing from the inside as if lit by trapped souls or ancient technology. The accounts were dismissed as hallucinations brought on by darkness and bad air. But here, the similarity is too striking to ignore. You step through the doorway. Inside, the space curves in smooth, sweeping arcs. The walls are lined with thin, luminous filaments that pulse like distant lightning trapped under glass. No furniture, no clutter, only an emptiness that feels intentional, like a meditation chamber designed for minds that think in larger arcs than surface dwellers. You close your eyes and listen. The hum here is softer than before, but clearer. It has layers, notes stacked upon notes, creating a harmony that vibrates gently through your bones. You imagine that if a civilization evolved in such an environment, they would communicate not through words or gestures, but through resonance, layering thoughts in oscillating waves that travel through walls, floors, entire cities. You feel small, but not insignificant. Stepping outside again, you notice something new. Thin tendrils of light rising from the rooftops of the structures, threading upward toward the crystalline sky. They pulse in colors you can't name, shifting between hues slowly, like breathing. You realize the city is connected, each building resonating with the others, harmonizing in a way that suggests a shared consciousness, or at least shared intention. Historians still argue whether the idea of highly advanced ancient societies beneath the earth came from misinterpreted myths or the human instinct to populate the unknown with intelligence. But here, surrounded by structures that feel grown rather than built, you suspect the debate may have missed the point. If intelligence arose below the surface, it would evolve differently, guided by pressure, heat, resonance, and time measured in tectonic shifts rather than years. You continue walking, and the path leads you to a wide central plaza where the glow intensifies. It looks like a gathering place, circular, flat, with fine lines etched into the ground forming concentric rings. You crouch, brushing your fingers along the grooves. They vibrate beneath your touch, each ring humming at its own frequency. A sudden memory rises. Ancient Stonehenge, arranged with astronomical precision. The Nazca lines, carved into Peru's desert with no clear explanation. The labyrinthine palace of Knossos, whose layout still perplexes modern archaeologists. Patterns within patterns, structures that encode knowledge, surfaces that hum with meaning. You whisper, whoever lived here wasn't hiding. They were teaching. The rings shift their resonance as though acknowledging the thought. The air feels heavier, but not oppressive, more like anticipation. You step into the center of the plaza, and the rings brighten slightly, responding to your weight. It feels like standing on a stage built for frequencies rather than words. You close your eyes again, letting the hum rise through you. It's hypnotic, ancient, wise. You sense the memory of the city. A memory not of individuals, but of patterns, cycles, echoes that shaped civilizations long before surface humans learned to shape bronze. And through the hum, an impression forms. Not a message, not a command, but a suggestion. You're not alone. You're not the first. And deeper still lies more. The glow around you softens again, inviting you to continue. The city behind you dims slightly, the structures settling into rest, as if recognizing that your path lies elsewhere. A new passage opens on the far side of the plaza, wide, sloping downward, breathing warm air. You feel the pulse of the earth below, not threatening, but urgent, as though the next revelation waits for you specifically. You take one last look at the city of lightless architecture, honoring its silence, its elegance, its patient endurance. Then you turn toward the downward path. There are encounters ahead, encounters that will challenge what you think an alien is, and none of them fall from the sky. The downward path curves gently, like a river of stone guiding you deeper into the unseen. Warm air rises from below, carrying with it a faint vibration, not the steady hum of the subterranean city you just left, but something lighter, almost curious, like fingertips drumming on a hollow log. You follow the sound, your steps careful, your breathing slow. The glow from the channel beneath your feet fades, replaced by scattered points of soft blue light embedded in the walls like tiny sapphires caught mid-pulse. The passage widens again, forming a long, sloping chamber whose ceiling arches low and then high in slow, rhythmic waves. Shadows move along the walls, not fast, not threatening, but fluttering softly as though responding to your presence. The air tastes mineral-rich, almost metallic, but with a cleaner edge that reminds you faintly of mountain springs. You step forward, and the shadows shift again. Not random, not wind. Something is responding to you. A thought rises unbidden. Not all encounters come from the sky. You remember a mainstream historical fact. In the late 20th century, during the height of UFO sightings, some researchers pointed out that a significant number of mysterious lights and apparitions were reported near caves, mines, and deep seismic zones. At the time, it was chalked up to gas emissions, optical illusions, and the human brain's enthusiasm for the dramatic. But standing here, in a chamber that echoes with unseen motion, that theory feels strangely incomplete. A soft clicking sound echoes through the tunnel. Then another, then a third. You stop, forcing yourself to breathe steadily. The clicks are rhythmic, spaced evenly, like communication. Short bursts, then long ones, then silence. The chamber amplifies them until you feel the vibration on your sternum. You murmur your next joke, equal parts nerves and bravado. If I'm about to meet the world's politest cave cricket, I hope it's wearing a name tag. Your voice emerges shakier than you'd like, but the sound steadies you. The clicking stops. Silence thickens. Then something shifts in the wall to your right. Not dramatically, not monstrously. It's a subtle rippling, like fabric catching a breeze. The blue points of light blink once, twice, then slide inward, retracting into the stone. You step closer, instinctively lifting your hand. The wall moves. It doesn't collapse or crack. It simply folds. The way petals fold inward at night. The stone ripples, flattening itself, and a figure emerges from the shadows. Tall, slender, its outline wavering like heat over desert sand. For a moment, you think it's made of shadow, but as it steps forward, the blue embers of light recolor its form in soft, gradient hues. It is humanoid, but not human. The limbs are long, jointed subtly differently from yours, the torso elongated. Its skin, if you can call it skin, resembles wet clay imbued with faint luminescence, no sharp angles, no hard lines. A body shaped for darkness and pressure, fluid and adaptable to narrow passages. Your breath catches, not out of fear, but awe. You take a step back, but the being tilts its head slightly. There is no hostility, only observation. The chamber hums faintly, matching the creature's rhythm. You realize the clicking wasn't a warning. It was a greeting. You try to speak, but your words dissolve in your throat. Instead, the vibrations beneath your feet intensify, and a low tone rises through the floor, steady, soft, almost soothing. The figure responds immediately, its chest cavity expanding slightly as though inhaling the frequency. Then it emits a clicking pulse of its own. Short, short, long, short. You don't understand the message, but your body feels the resonance. A fringe tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some explorers in the early 1900s reported encounters in vast cave systems, pale figures glimpsed at the edge of lamplight, vanishing when approached. Their accounts were ridiculed, attributed to hallucinations from lack of oxygen. But here, now, in front of you, it feels far too grounded, too coherent, too intentional to dismiss so easily. The figure steps closer, closing half the distance between you. Its movements are fluid, almost dance-like, as though gravity is optional. You notice tiny motes of light drifting from its skin, like dust from a moth's wing. They rise slightly, as though drawn upward by the crystalline network you saw in the subterranean city. You swallow hard. "Hi," you whisper, because your brain, in all its evolutionary magnificence, has chosen the least profound greeting imaginable. Another quiet joke slips from your lips. "I come in peace, unless you're tracking my caffeine intake, in which case I plead the fifth." The words feel absurd, but they anchor you. The being pauses, then releases a soft vibration, as though acknowledging your attempt at communication. The tone is warm, harmonic. It vibrates your ribs in a way that feels reassuring. You exhale, and something inside you unclenches. Beneath the being's feet, the stone ripples gently. You realize it's not standing on the rock. It's standing with it. The entire chamber seems attuned to its presence, moving softly in response to every motion. It lives in resonance. You think. It speaks through pressure, light, vibration, everything the surface world forgot to listen to. A scholarly debate floats through your mind. Some anthropologists argue that human myths of angels, demons, and subterranean entities might originate from encounters with isolated hominin species, now extinct, who evolved in deeper ecosystems. Others claim it's nothing more than metaphor. Historians still argue whether these myths hide memories of real encounters or simply reflect the human tendency to populate darkness with imagination. But the figure in front of you isn't memory or metaphor. It's here. Slowly, it raises one elongated hand, palm outward. A gesture. Universal. Peaceful. You mimic it, raising your hand to mirror the motion. As your palms align, though separated by several feet, a warm pulse ripples through the chamber. Light ignites between you, not bright, but soft, like phosphorescence released from the air itself. You feel something. Not emotion exactly, but recognition. A sense of being catalogued gently, respectfully. As though it's learning your rhythm the way you learned its. You take a slow step forward. The being remains still, watching. There's an elegance in its posture, a patience that suggests you are not the first surface dweller it has encountered. And then a new resonance flows through the chamber, deeper, broader, like a bell being struck in the earth's mantle. The being turns its head slightly, listening. Something has called it. It steps back, body rippling through the stone as though the wall were a curtain. Before it disappears, it emits one final pulse. Short, long, long, short. A pattern you feel in your bones, a farewell, you think, or an invitation, or both. The light in the wall shifts again, folding back into place, leaving the chamber still and hushed. Yet the air around you hums with new awareness. Encounters like this weren't from the sky. They never were. The stories of visitors, watchers, messengers, maybe they weren't extraterrestrial at all. You place your hand on the stone where the being vanished. It's warm, still vibrating faintly. And ahead, deeper down the path, the warm air continues to rise, inviting you toward the next revelation, toward the guardians who wait even closer to the Earth's fiery heart. The warmth rising from the deeper passage thickens around you, carrying a faint rumble that grows steadier with every step, like an immense heartbeat resonating beneath the crust. The encounter with the clay-skinned being lingers in your senses, imprinting your breath with its rhythm. Now, the Earth's own pulse feels different, more directive, as though the planet itself is asking you to continue, urging you toward the next threshold. You tighten your grip on the wall as the tunnel begins to slope more sharply downward. The stone bends in subtle spirals, smooth and polished, not by water, but by long, deliberate shaping. You feel the hum deepen, the air dense with pressure, like the inside of an orchestra hall tuned for sounds beyond human hearing. After several minutes, the tunnel opens into a dome-shaped chamber bathed in a ruddy glow. It doesn't come from flame or bioluminescence, it comes from the stone itself. The walls pulse with slow waves of heat and color, shifting from deep red to molten orange, as if simmering with ancient memory. You step inside carefully, and the air greets you with a low, rhythmic vibration, not threatening, but authoritative. The guardians. You don't see them yet, but you feel them. You stand at the threshold as one might stand before a council of elders, holding your breath without realizing it. A mainstream historical fact flickers through your mind. The Romans believed that beneath Vulcan's forge, the fiery region under mountains, lived beings who shaped destinies through fire and metal. People dismissed it as myth, but here, walking into a chamber sculpted by unseen hands near Earth's living magma, you wonder how much of that ancient intuition was metaphor and how much was misinterpreted witness. The floor shifts slightly beneath your feet. Not an earthquake, nothing that chaotic. This is calculated. Like the earth adjusting its seating before speaking, a chime rings through the chamber, not a metal chime, something deeper, resonating through the walls, floor, and air at once. It vibrates your ribs. The chamber responds with a brighter pulse of molten light. Then you see them. Figures rising from the far edges of the room, not emerging from doorways or cracks, but simply becoming visible, as though they stepped out of the glow itself. They are broader than the slender being you met before, their forms more solid, more grounded. Their skin resembles compressed obsidian, dark and reflective, with faint veins of orange light running under the surface like magma rivers. They move with a weight that feels ancient, purposeful. Guardians not of passageways, but of boundaries. You instinctively straighten your posture. The air seems to require it. One of the guardians steps forward. Its eyes, if you can call them eyes, glow with a deep amber light, shifting subtly as if reading your frequency. It emits a low vibration, a sustained hum that fills the dome and resonates through your bones. Your body reacts before your mind does. You inhale deeply, and somehow your breath aligns with the vibration. You feel instantly calmer, clearer. The guardian notices, and the hum modulates gently, as though acknowledging your response. You try to speak, but the chamber absorbs your voice before it forms. Words are useless here. Communication is older, deeper. Okay, you whisper anyway, because your human brain insists on contributing. I guess we're doing the silent treatment, for enlightenment. Your joke feels tiny in the molten glow, but it loosens some of the tension gripping your chest. The Guardian raises a hand, palm outward, and the air vibrates slightly. Shapes ripple faintly through the chamber, like heat waves forming symbols. Not written language, more like impressions, emotional currents, patterns of thought conveyed through temperature and frequency. You feel something brush your mind. Not intrusive, not forceful, more like a question. A gentle, "Why are you here?" Not the words, but the shape of the intent. You focus on your breathing, letting the truth rise inside you. Curiosity. Awe. The desire to understand what exists beneath the stories, the myths, the misinterpretations. You feel the impression of your intention form in your mind, like a geometric shape pulsing outward. The Guardian shifts slightly, and the chamber's glow brightens in response. Approval, perhaps. You recall a fringe tidbit. Some Hollow Earth theorists claimed that deep beneath the mantle exist sentinel beings, neither hostile nor benevolent, but custodial, monitoring the planet's magnetic and tectonic balance. They supposedly intervene during times of great surface upheaval. The idea always seemed strange, even fanciful. But standing here, feeling the weight and wisdom of the Guardians, the theory no longer feels absurd. Another chime reverberates, deeper this time. The walls ripple subtly, like the chamber herself is listening. A second Guardian steps forward, its movement slower, more measured. It lowers one hand toward the ground. The floor responds, its glow sharpening into a pattern, a living diagram forming at your feet. Lines of molten gold trace themselves across the stone, creating a map, not of tunnels or cities, but of seismic lines, tectonic plates, and swirling mantle currents. You recognize continental outlines, but distorted by pressure and curvature. Then new patterns overlay them, intersecting circles, resonance fields, heat signatures. The Guardians bear witness to the heartbeat of the planet, not as myth, but as stewardship. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations could predict earthquakes based on subtle environmental cues. But here, the being before you shapes a 3D tremor map with a gesture, as casually as you might scroll through a weather app. Your breath catches as the diagram shifts, highlighting areas of conflict, pressure, disruption. Some you recognize from surface events, others you don't. A soft pulse radiates from the Guardian, brushing your skin like a sigh. You sense the message beneath the vibration. We watch. We stabilize. We intervene when necessary. A chill climbs your spine, even in the heat. Not fear, reverence. The first Guardian steps closer. You feel heat radiating from its form, but not painfully. It extends its hand again, palm open. A pulse emanates outward, slow, strong, ancient. You mirror the gesture. The chamber brightens suddenly, enveloping you in warm light. You feel pressure on all sides, not crushing but embracing, like being held in the world's oldest memory. For a moment, you sense the planet's interior not as rock or fire, but as a network of living forces, harmonizing in cycles far beyond human experience. The sensation fades gradually, the light dimming until the chamber returns to its steady red glow. The Guardians step back in unison. You feel changed, not in body, but in understanding. You bow your head without thinking. The gesture feels right. The Guardians do not bow in return. They simply exist, rooted in time deeper than the mantle they guard. A new rumble rises from below, an invitation. A passage opens behind them, molten light spilling out like dawn through a crack. You swallow, steady yourself, and step toward it. Because whatever lies beyond the Guardians is older still. The newly revealed passage radiates a deep, molten glow, less fiery than the chamber of the Guardians, but thicker, more layered, like light filtered through veins of living ember. As you step forward, the air shifts in a slow wave, dense with heat yet strangely breathable. The rumble beneath your feet settles into a steady vibration. It feels like you're walking along the backbone of something immense, something that has been awake far longer than any species on the surface. The tunnel slopes downward, then levels, then dips again in a slow, deliberate cadence, as though its shape was carved not merely for movement, but for ritual. The stone here is smoother, darker, and streaked with metallic sheen. When your hand brushes it, you feel a faint tug, magnetic, subtle, like static trying to pull your fingertips into the rock. You recognize that sensation from surface science. Certain minerals in the deep crust exhibit strong magnetic alignment. A mainstream geological fact. Yet here, the alignment feels purposeful, almost architectural. The walls are not simply lined with magnetic minerals. They are magnetic instructions, a circuit woven through stone. A soft clicking sound echoes from up ahead. You freeze for a moment, listening. Unlike the friendly, curious rhythm of the earlier encounter, this clicking is sharper, more structured. Mechanical, yet too smooth to be metal grinding metal. You continue forward cautiously, the sound growing clearer with each step. The passage opens into a colossal cavern, vast, circular, its floor descending in terraced rings like a giant amphitheater. And at the center, half buried in the stone like a fossilized seed, stands a machine. At least, machine is the closest word your surface vocabulary offers. It rises 20, maybe 30 feet tall, its form rounded and organic, like a cross between a beetle's shell and a drill bit forged from obsidian. Its plates are smooth and slightly translucent, revealing faint orange currents flowing beneath the surface. Tubes extend from its sides and vanish into the surrounding rock, pulsing like arteries. And all around its base lie spirals carved into the ground. Conduits, guides, perhaps even restraints. You inhale sharply, humbled. You whisper, "So this is what you've been hiding." Your voice is small in the vast chamber. The clicking stops. A new vibration rises, so low it feels like a thought rather than a sound. The machine shifts slightly, plates flexing with soft, sighing pops. Dust drifts from its shell. It isn't awake, not fully, but it isn't dormant either. It exists in a state somewhere between rest and readiness. You approach slowly, careful not to disrupt the carved spirals encircling the machine. As you walk, the glow within the plates brightens subtly, responding to your movement. Heat rolls outward, warm enough to sweat your palms, but not enough to burn. A fringe tidbit flashes across your mind. In the 1980s, drill operators in Siberia reported inexplicable machinery-like vibrations deep beneath the boreholes, patterns that matched neither geological shifts nor mechanical malfunction. Their recordings were dismissed as corrupted data or deliberate hoaxes. But here, faced with a burrowing construct older than written history, the story feels less like fiction and more like misinterpreted evidence. You draw closer until you stand at the edge of the central ring. The machine emits another pulse, low, steady, curious. You whisper the next joke under your breath, because humor is the only shield you have left. If this thing starts asking for a software update, I'm leaving. But no update comes. Only a shift, a panel sliding silently open along its side, revealing a hollow interior lined with intricate patterns. Not gears, not wires. Something more elegant, more alive. You step forward cautiously. The patterns glow softly, their rhythms echoing the frequencies you felt earlier from the subterranean beings. A realization strikes you. This machine wasn't built by the underground civilizations you've encountered. It was grown, and possibly grown by something deeper still. You rest your fingers on one of the glowing patterns. The vibration surges gently, like a heartbeat sinking to your touch. Light flows outward along the machine's internal lines, illuminating symbols that look eerily similar to the ones carved on the earlier maps. Loops, crescents, spirals that denote roots and depths far greater than what you've already traversed. A shiver crawls up your spine. This isn't just a machine. It's a vessel. A traveling organism wrapped in engineered purpose, a burrower that can carve through layers humans barely understand. Mantle, lithosphere, the deep frontier where heat and pressure become impossible for surface life. Historians still argue whether ancient myths about serpent gods tunneling through Earth represent tectonic imagery or symbolic metaphors. But standing here, touching a machine that resembles a living dragon-shaped drill, you suspect those myths might be echoes, cultural memories of encounters with technology far older than our civilizations. You circle the machine slowly, noticing more details. Some plates are etched with deep grooves, scratches from rock strata miles below. Others are pristine, glowing faintly. Sections of its shell appear to repair themselves, slowly knitting cracks together like bone healing. Then you see something lodged near the base, a long metallic shard embedded in the floor, slick with mineral residue. You kneel and examine it. It's unfamiliar, smooth, reflective, slightly curved. You try to lift it, but it clings to the stone as though magnetized. Heat radiates through it. A memory flickers. Scientists once recovered strange metallic spheres from deep boreholes, perfectly spherical, impossible to date, and so hard that industrial drills couldn't scratch them. Most ended up in obscure museum boxes, perhaps not spherical by accident, perhaps fragments of machines like this, ancient burrowers moving through Earth long before humans picked up a chisel. You stand again, heart pounding. The machine shifts another inch, this time more deliberately. The spirals at its base brighten, glowing like molten rivers. You realize with sudden clarity that the machine is responding to a signal, a call from deeper below. Perhaps triggered by the Guardian's earlier chime, you step back instinctively. Heat spikes, pressure builds, the chamber vibrates like a vast drum. Then, abruptly, everything stabilizes. The machine quiets again, settling into a low, steady thrum, as if waiting, not for activation, not for fuel, for you. You feel it clearly. The invitation. A panel slides open lower on the machine's shell, large enough for a human to enter. Warm air flows from it, carrying a faint hum similar to the resonance of the subterranean city. Not threatening, almost welcoming. Your knees weaken. Whatever lies deeper, beneath this cavern, beneath the chambers of the Guardians, beneath all known geology, is accessible only through this vessel. You run a trembling hand along its inner wall. The glow responds, rippling outward. The machine wants to show you something. You swallow hard and whisper, "All right, but if this is a one-way trip, someone better leave the light on." Humor again, your last little joke before the threshold. You take a breath. Then you step inside. The machine closes around you with a gentle hiss, encasing you in warm, humming darkness as it prepares to descend into the unknown inner layers of the world, toward beings who might not just guard Earth's depths, but shape them. For a moment, there is nothing but warmth and darkness. The shell has sealed around you with a soft, final sigh, and every trace of the cavern falls away. No guardians, no city without a sun, no echo of your own footsteps. Only the living hum of the machine and the immense weight of the world pressed above and below. Pressure settles over you like a heavy cloak, not crushing, but undeniable, reminding you that you are no longer on the surface. You're inside the planet's body now. Then the descent begins. There is no lurch, no feeling of falling. The vessel glides, spiraling downward as if the rock is parting ahead of it like water. You don't hear drilling, just a rising chorus of vibrations. Bands of soft light ripple along the inner shell, tracing circles, arcs, jagged curves. These aren't decorations, they're readings. Tiny tremors flick under your feet, each one a gentle tap on an invisible drum. Some are sharp and brief, like snapped twigs. Others roll slowly, like distant thunder crawling across a mountain range. You think of a mainstream historical milestone. John Milne's seismograph in the 1880s, the device that first let humans see earthquakes as inked lines on paper. Now you're riding inside an instrument that does the same thing with light and pressure. Each quiver in the stone paints a pattern above you. Loops, spikes, waves. You start to recognize repetition. Certain rhythms return again and again, like phrases. Long, short, short. Pause. Long, short, short. Somewhere far above, tectonic plates are grinding, continents moving less than a fingernail's width. Down here, those movements sound less like random violence and more like stressed sentences. The burrower responds with its own low tones, deep pulses that roll outward through the hull. When a sharp tremor spikes, the machine hums back at a slightly different pitch. The signature on the wall softens. For a strange, quiet moment, you realize you're watching the earth negotiate with itself. Your hand drifts to the wall. Warmth creeps into your palm, carrying faint, steady oscillations. You close your eyes and let them flow through you. The patterns don't become words, but they become feelings. Pressure building, then easing, like a sigh trapped in stone. A thought escapes as a murmur. So earthquakes are just the planet clearing its throat. Good to know. Your joke sounds thin against the deep hum, but it steadies you, keeps you human inside all this inhuman scale. The machine angles slightly, diving deeper. The frequencies get heavier, layered, like a choir a few rooms away. Beneath it all sits a single bass note so low you almost miss it, felt more in your bones than in your ears. It seems to vibrate through centuries. Earth as more than rock, a presence, a slow attention. Ancient cultures named it Gaia, Pachamama, countless others. Historians still argue whether those myths were merely poetic metaphors or hazy reflections of a real sense that the ground was somehow impossibly awake. Light concentrates on one side of the shell, forming a new pattern. Wide, smooth waves, regular and even. They don't look like quake spikes. They're too tidy. You remember reading about strange, low-frequency, seismic hums that ripple through Earth even when no earthquakes happen. Barely detectable signals that puzzled modern researchers. Down here, they're impossible to miss. They throb like the quiet background song of the planet. The machine slows. On the inner wall, lines rearrange into a ring etched with small nodal points. Tiny pulses move between them in repeating circuits. It dawns on you, these are channels. It's through which the inner civilizations route their own signals. The tremors you feel aren't all accidents. Some are messages injected into rock. You watch a sequence of pulses shoot along one path, merge with a natural tremor, and glide away into the dark. You and your kind have always assumed earthquakes were one-way broadcasts from Earth to the helpless things on its surface. But what if some of them are replies? You think of strange readings buried in scientific reports, seismograms that flared with unaccountable blips before certain historic events, unexplained rumbles near early test sites that no one could quite categorize. Most were filed under instrument error or forgotten in dusty archives. Yet here you are, inside a machine designed to sing back at stress lines, to nudge, soothe, redirect. You picture the beings below feeling explosions and tunneling and weight and concrete as agitations in their own body, answering in the language of pressure so the crust doesn't tear itself apart too quickly. A sharp jolt taps the hull. Not dangerous, more like a knuckle rapped on a table. Symbols flare above you. Arcs, spirals, a brief flash of hot orange. The machine halts. Another tremor swells in the distance, louder, jagged. A spike on the wall that looks like anger. It's happening far away, along a fault you cannot name from this depth. But its rhythm is unmistakable. Build, build, snap. The burrower sings back, releasing a complex chord that vibrates your teeth. You feel the outgoing sound as much as you hear it, like standing too close to a cathedral organ. The spike on the wall softens. The pattern steadies. Somewhere in the unseen, stone shifts more gently than it was about to. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Okay. You mutter. You're not just drills, you're therapists. The absurdity of the line makes you smile, and the tight band around your ribs loosens. The descent resumes, slower now, like sinking through thick, glowing syrup. You lean your forehead to the shell and think of old listeners, the priestesses of Delphi seated over a fault line, shamans pressing ears to the ground, villagers who swore mountains spoke before eruptions. Modern studies talk about gases and tremor noise, tidy explanations. But sitting here, inside a vessel that literally talks back to the crust, you suspect those listeners weren't entirely wrong. They just didn't have a translation key. New symbols shimmer into view, ghostly outlines of continents, blurred and distorted by depth, ringed by shifting bands. Little flares blink here and there. Storms, ocean surges, great swarms of movement rendered as heat and vibration. You're seeing the surface from the inside out, not as cities and borders, but as stress points on a living shell. The realization sits heavily on your chest. Everything your species does leaves fingerprints down here. Dams, mines, trains, tunnels, crowds, tiny taps and shoves, all feeding into the same great conversation. You've been talking to the planet by accident. The machine hums softer, almost like reassurance. The deep bass note warms, telling you in its language of patience that Earth has endured ice ages, volcanism, impacts, ages of chaos. It adjusts, compensates, mends. Still, it feels you. Every step. Your throat tightens with a quiet, unexpected humility. Outside, you sense more than hear a distant, answering tremor. Not angry, not pleading, just aware. Like someone shifting in their sleep because you turned over in yours. For a brief, suspended moment, the burrower levels out. The patterns on the wall calm into smooth, concentric rings, gently pulsing. You realize this is a pause in the descent, a breathing space before you reach the deepest chamber, the place the maps called the threshold. You stand there, palm to warm stone, listening to the vast body you're inside. It is not a silent lump of rock. It is layered sound, layered memory, layered response. A being that has been holding conversations in heat and pressure long before your species learned to bang rocks together for fire or aim antennas at the sky in hope of a distant reply. Only now, for the first time in your life, do you hear clearly what has always been there. The Earth is not quiet. It never was. You are only just learning how to listen. The concentric rings of light circling the inner shell swell once, as if the machine itself takes a breath with you. Then, with no jolt, no drama, the burrower tips its nose downward again and resumes the descent. The frequencies around you deepen, becoming so low and rich that they feel less like sound and more like weather inside your bones. You know now you're close. The light on the inner shell shifts from warm golds to a muted pearly glow, like the color of dawn seen through thick fog. Symbols bloom across the surface, those same spirals, loops, and nodal maps you saw carved into stone tablets and plaza floors, except now they're dynamic, flowing, rearranging themselves as the machine moves. You realize you're watching a real-time map of your descent. A word forms in your mind, uninvited but fitting. Agartha. You'd seen it before on dog-eared pages and conspiracy forums, buried between blurry photos and unhinged comment threads. A rumored inner realm, a hidden world. A legend whispered into microphones at 3 a.m. Now the name drifts through you not as a promise of paradise, but as a coordinate, less a place, more a layer. You think of a mainstream historical fact. Early 20th century polar expeditions meticulously charted vast stretches of ice and ocean, closing many blank spaces on the globe. Their logs are full of wind, ice, suffering, and science. Yet alongside those heroic accounts, fringe stories bloomed, claims of hidden entrances at the poles, of pilots glimpsing greener lands beyond the ice. Historians still argue whether those tales were deliberate hoaxes, misread navigational errors, or projections of human hunger for mystery. And here you are, not at a polar gate, but at a vertical one, dropping through stone toward a realm those stories believed in but never truly knew. The burrower slows. The soft glow ahead intensifies, not from the shell, but from something outside, seeping inward. You feel a pressure gradient ease. For the first time since you entered the machine, the sensation of rock on all sides thins, like clouds breaking above an unseen valley. Then the descent stops completely. The vibrations quiet to a faint tremble. The shell hums once, a gentle, settling note. Panels release with a soft, layered sigh, and the vessel opens, petals unfolding. Light pours in, not blinding, not like the sun, but broad and diffuse, as if the world you're about to see is lit from within its own air. You step out onto solid ground, and your breath leaves you in a soundless exhale. You stand on a ledge overlooking an immense hollow, not an empty shell, but a world contained within a world. Far below, plains of smooth, pale terrain stretch outward, not quite rock and not quite soil, but something glassy and alive with faint, shifting hues. Structures rise from it, domes, spires, flowing bridges that arc from one elevation to another in graceful, mathematically precise curves. They glow from within, their surfaces shimmering with slow pulses of color, like the breathing city you saw before, multiplied 100-fold and set into an open sky. Above you, instead of a ceiling of stone, an inner firmament curves, streaked with luminous bands that resemble auroras trapped inside crystal. They ripple gently, casting moving patterns on the ground, like reflections of a sea overhead. This is no small chamber. It is a geometry of immensity, scaled beyond your surface instincts. You murmur, "Okay, not exactly a secret basement." Your joke is soft, almost reverent. It hangs in the air, then dissolves into the hum of this inner expanse. You take a step forward, feeling the ground respond with a faint, elastic give. Each footfall triggers a tiny burst of light, radiating outward in delicate ripples. This world notices you, measures you, but doesn't reject you. Not yet. At the edge of the ledge, a walkway extends. Grown rather than built, seamless with the stone, it slopes gently downward, spiraling toward the plains. As you walk, you feel an odd déjà vu. The layout below mirrors the maps you've seen carved in secret chambers, rings within rings, paths within paths. You are walking into a diagram that always hinted at more than lines and symbols. Halfway down, you see them, figures moving along the paths, some tall and slender like the first being you met, others broader, their silhouettes echoing the guardians of the mantle. They move with effortless coordination, gliding along bridges and through domes as if surfing the invisible currents of this inner atmosphere. The closer you get, the more you feel it. Waves of resonance passing through the air itself, a kind of ambient conversation that never fully stops. You realize something disorienting and oddly comforting. Nobody looks surprised to see you. Some beings turn their luminous gazes briefly in your direction, but there is no alarm, no scrambling, no intruder response. Just a subtle adjustment in the ambient frequency, like an orchestra making room for one more instrument joining mid-song. You step onto the plane, and the ground's ripples brighten, broadcasting your presence in soft, harmless tides. A group of nearby beings, slender, glowing faintly from within, pause and simply listen to the pattern around your feet. You suspect they're reading more from your footsteps than you could ever hide. One of them lifts a hand. A familiar gesture now. You mirror it, smiling despite the awe pressing tight against your ribs. A wave of faint vibration washes through you, warm, inquisitive. In your mind, impressions form, images, sensations, echoes of your own memories reflected back with gentle curiosity. Caves and cities and sky, wars and rain and laughter, screens and stars and seas, a whole surface world reduced to mood, rhythm, flavor. You feel another impression in return, something that is not yours, ages of calibrating tremors, shaping magma flows, guiding minerals into veins, buffering impacts from above. Not gods, not devils, engineers of balance, gardeners of pressure, and woven through their long memory is you, your kind. Surface walkers, fire users, radio shouters, always restless. You feel no hatred in them, no worship either, only watchfulness, and a cautious, almost amused concern. A fringe tidbit flickers through your thoughts. Those tales of tall beings emerging after disasters, floods, quakes, eruptions, offering knowledge or warnings before vanishing again. People later called them angels, demons, aliens. Maybe some were hoaxes, stories stretched like taffy. But perhaps a few were real. Inner dwellers testing the surface, checking whether the volatile new species crawling up there would learn to listen before tearing the shell apart. The beings around you pulse with a soft, collective tone. The city responds, its domes and bridges brightening in tandem. You sense a question forming in the air, not in words but in structure. What will you do with this? Not, are you afraid of us? Not, do you think we're superior? Just that. What will you do now that you've seen a world inside your world? A mirror not of your faces, but of your choices. You think of your own species, curious and reckless, tender and ruthless, capable of art and cruelty in the same afternoon. You think of how quickly humans declare anything unknown a threat, and anything powerful a god. You think of how you called them aliens before you ever considered neighbors. You feel a smile tug gently at the corner of your mouth. I don't know yet, you whisper, more to yourself than to them. But I can try not to lie about you. The ambient hum dips and rises again, like a chuckle made of stone and light. You understand then, they are not here to invade your skies. They don't need your oceans or your continents. Their territory is older, deeper, more essential. Nor are they here to save you from yourselves. They've watched too many cycles to play favorites in a single species drama. They are here to keep the shell from cracking. And in doing so, they hold a mirror to you, not reflecting your technology or your borders, but your resonance, the way you vibrate through your actions, your footprints, your tremors in history. Kin, threat, or mirror? You stand in Agartha, and the answer settles quietly around you. They are mirrors. Whether you become kin or threat is up to you. You breathe in the soft, glowing air of the inner world one last time, letting its subtle frequencies pass through you, etching themselves into your memory. You know you won't carry back photographs or proof, only the echo of this hum and the way it changed the shape of your questions. The ground beneath you pulses gently, a farewell, a promise that the earth will keep speaking, whether you listen or not. You turn back toward the waiting machine, toward the long path upward, carrying with you a secret that was never really hidden, just buried in a frequency your world forgot how to hear. The burrower encloses you once more, warm and dark and steady. As it begins the rise through stone, the inner lights dim to a soothing glow, and the deep note of the earth returns, slow and patient. You feel your muscles loosen at last. The tension in your jaw melts. The pressure that once felt overwhelming now wraps you like a blanket. The world above, with all its noise and glare and urgency, feels impossibly far away, like a memory from another life. The frequencies you've been riding begin to soften, their edges rounding. Sharp spikes dissolve into gentle curves. The patterns on the shell become simpler, slower, drifting in easy waves that rock you in place. Each breath you draw comes a little longer, a little deeper, as if your lungs have synced to the planet's ancient rhythm. Images drift through your mind like lanterns on a quiet river. The glowing city without a sun, the obsidian guardian standing watch in the molten chamber, the clay-skinned figure emerging silently from the wall, the vast hollow of Agartha opening like an inner sky. They no longer clamor for explanation. They simply exist. Like pages in a book you know you can revisit in memory whenever you wish. You realize, slowly, that the question that brought you down here, where are the aliens, has unraveled into something gentler. Not a puzzle to solve, but a story to carry. A reminder that you are never just walking on Earth. You are walking with it, sharing space with ancient neighbors whose language is pressure and light instead of words. The machine hums a little lower, a lullaby made of tectonic patience. You let your eyes close, trusting that the same forces that have held oceans and mountains in place for ages can cradle one small traveler for a while longer. The last of your fear exhales from your chest, leaving only a quiet gratitude you don't need to name. Upward, the vessel glides, carrying you toward the familiar crust, toward cities and streets and sky. Yet you already know that when you stand on the surface again, the ground will feel different under your feet, warmer, more alive, whispering with a voice you've finally learned to hear. For now, though, you let the darkness hold you, let the vibrations smooth themselves into silence. The earth speaks in slow sentences, and tonight it has said enough. You drift on that thought, peaceful and weightless in the deepest cradle you will ever know, as the world within gently returns you to the world above.